everyone. It's 9:02. Let's get the ball rolling. Thank you for joining us. I'm sure some stragglers will be coming in, but that's fine. I'll speak slow during this introduction, but welcome and thank you for joining us for the Greenest Building series of our Arizona Preservation webinar series. My name is Jim McPherson. I'm board chair of the Arizona Preservation Foundation, our statewide historic preservation advocacy group. And on behalf of our State Historic Preservation Office and the Arizona Preservation Foundation Board, thank you again for joining us. And thanks for their support in our ability to provide these webinars for you and for others who have attended in the past. Back in 2020, when we all were facing the effects of the pandemic, we had to migrate to online for our conference. And so we bought a Zoom account and started up and went online for that first conference in 2020. Then we just said, let's continue the process and start a series of webinars to advance other programs in between the conference and the next conference thereafter. So the webinar series has been a great tool to do that. I would encourage you to visit our website where we do have the recordings of our past webinars. Also, I would be remiss in saying we're also looking for call for sessions for our 2022 session that will be held in Yuma. You can see, let's see right there on the back screen. We will be in Yuma in October for our annual statewide conference. So now I'd like to turn this session over to Alicia Adolph. Alicia is a graduate of the University of Arizona, and she is an ASU, Arizona State University Public Allies intern for the foundation. And she's been doing a great job for us from the standpoint of helping us with our social media, all the platforms that we're on, as well as assist several of our board members with projects that they're working on in their communities, as well as the organization in general. So I do want to thank Alicia for helping to set this session up. It's a three-part series. I want to thank Connie Gutierrez, our conference planner, who's behind the scenes doing the logistics, and also Donna Reiner, a board member of the Arizona Preservation Foundation, who's also been supporting this effort as well. So without further ado, I will pass this over to Alicia and we will get started. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. Hello, everyone. Welcome. Happy Earth Month. Again, as Jim shared, my name is Alicia Adolph, and I'm a public ally in Arizona Preservation Foundation. This webinar is the first in a series of 3 for our Greenest Building series. The inspiration for the title came from the saying the greenest building is the one that already exists. And so I wanted to touch on the fact that preservation is a much more sustainable and environmentally friendly alternative to demolition of buildings. I'm sure that we all know and remember when we heard about a building that was going to be demolished and how we felt about that. So when a building is demolished, all of the materials are sent to landfill, and which wastes materials, energy, has emissions. And so this webinar covers adaptive reuse projects that were able to save the building and keep it within the community and reduce waste. So during the webinar, if you have any questions, please put them in the chat and we will have the Q&A at the end. And again, this is recorded. So after today, it will be available on our website and on our YouTube channel. Our speakers today are Jeremy Haines with the Forest Service, Craig DeMarco with Upward Projects, and Corky Poster with Poster Murdo McDonald Design. And our first speaker today is Jeremy Haines, and he has worked in cultural resource management for the past 25 years, principally for federal agencies in Arizona, including Grand Canyon National Park, the Apache Sitgreaves National Forest, the Coconino National Forest, and most recently, the Kaibab National Forest. For the past 10 years, he has served as chairman for the U.S. Forest Service Rooms with the View program, or cabin rental program, and remains an advocate for historic preservation and sustainability within the agency. So, without further ado, our first speaker is Jeremy Haines.
Hi, everyone. Jeremy Haines. I'm really honored to be a part of this presentation, or part of this symposium today. And I do want to real quick ask everybody to simultaneously knock on wood that all the tech works. So if you find a piece of wood, please knock on it. And I'm going to try and share my screen here, and hopefully we won't have any issues. All right. And Alicia, if you can just give me an okay when it's up and running.
Yes, I see your screen.
Hey, all right. Let me just take this thing off here real quick. All right. So yeah, thank you for that introduction, Alicia. Yeah, I'm a public services staff officer for the Kaibab National Forest, and an ancillary duty on my plate is to serve on the Arizona Cabin Rental Board and help guide this program. It's a small program, and I just hope to give you a little bit of an overview of it. We really serve to address some of the issues that Alicia brought up regarding saving buildings, pursuing kind of a more of a green point of view from the agency to not fill our landfills and save what we can. Just real quick, the program, I work for Region 3 of the U.S. Forest Service, which covers New Mexico and Arizona. The program only covers Arizona, but we are working to try to expand the program to New Mexico. So Forest Service, just, for folks who aren't familiar with the agency, it's the Department of Agriculture. There's 6 national forests in Arizona. We cover about 15% of Arizona's land base, over 10 million acres. So pretty big, and we have about 2,000 buildings, many of which are becoming out of service just due to consolidations and changes in how we staff people and where we put them. Big part of that program then is to just try to find reuses for these buildings, and recreation rentals has been a strategy for us. And we do a fair amount of try to promote our cabins and get information out to the public through getting them into Arizona highways and on web pages, and we do some promotional art as well. And it's just an example of one of our postcards and posters that we've produced as a part of the program. So real quick, we're the Forest Service. We fight fires, and we try to manage huge, giant ecosystems. Recreation is a small slice of what we do, and as Alicia mentioned, I'm just an advocate to really try to expand what we can offer to the public beyond campgrounds and our usual amenities of trails and other rec opportunities. So this program really serves to marry some of the deferred maintenance issues we have with buildings and revenue streams related to buildings, and provide a unique recreation opportunity to the public. So that's kind of first and foremost. This is what I sell internally to my agency folks. That preservation is what I'm after and what I'm pushing, but in order to provide an adaptive reuse and something we can share with the public, and principally to provide a revenue stream for deferred maintenance, is to adapt these buildings in order to rent them and use that money to put into the deferred operation and maintenance, utilities, deferred maintenance. So again, our program maintains unused administrative facilities and protect historic structures through this adaptive reuse process. Given the volume of buildings that we do have as an agency, there's a big push to get rid of our infrastructure. And so myself and other cultural resource specialists who work for the agency are really on the front lines trying to protect these places. The question always comes up, well, we don't have money to put into the long-term maintenance of these. So our push has then been to say, well, great, there's these authorities that we can use to rent the cabins online. They're rented through recreation.gov, and the funding comes right back to the forest as a part of the Federal Lands Recreation Enhancement Act, and they go right back to the sites for that maintenance. It also covers salary for folks to maintain those cabins. We can't do that without a cabin rental board, and that's where I sit as a chairman of the cabin rental board. It's made up of representatives of all forests that have cabins in Arizona. So the board, and I'm mentioning this because this is kind of important just as a federal agency, being able to do this is difficult and rare. It's the only program of its kind in the entire Forest Service system. In that we rent and we pool all of our money into one program that's administered by the board. Started in the late 1990s, kind of really an internal grassroots federal group of concerned individuals that were looking for means by which to save these buildings. It's a self-governing board, so representatives of all forests in Arizona. We've doubled the number of cabins since 2008. We have 20 sites with 29 cabins across the state. Like I mentioned, it's an interesting grassroots organization. Everybody from people who are forest or district rangers, staff officers, all the way to people, the rec techs on the ground maintaining these buildings are a part of that program. Make decisions on bringing in new cabins. And we're not trying to save every building. It's just not possible, but we're really trying to zero in on the buildings that have historic significance and are eligible, if not listed on the National Register. A big thing that we do in Arizona with this program is pool our money. And it really made the program viable. And what I mean by that is all the cabins across the state, forests are their own entities. They like to retain their funding, but through our program, we're able to take the revenue generated through the program and put it into one pot, and then redistribute it based on need, deferred maintenance needs, and new investments, new cabins that we want to bring into the program. Really unique to the program, and I had to fight pretty hard all the way to the Washington office to keep that model going in the agency. We manage under this Federal Lands Recreation Enhancement Act, that's FLREA. So the Forest Service, like any other agency, can't just say, oh, we want to rent it and make money. There's a whole process related to how we bring these cabins on that involves public input and review at various levels, and structures by which we apply revenue rates. So there's a lot that goes into the whole process administratively and bureaucratically. We market and advertise the program, like I mentioned, trying to shamelessly plug it at every opportunity we have. And really, a lot of experience to other forests that are interested in the program. So I spend a lot of my time on the phone talking to other foresters, trying to model a similar program and figure out how to get their cabins off the ground and into a rental status. I'll just talk a bit about the cabins. I didn't provide pictures of all of them, but I just want to share photos and a little info on some of them. Hall Cabin, south of Grand Canyon National Park, hugely popular, one of the last remnants of the Grand Canyon stagecoach route, which ran from Flagstaff to Grand Canyon. Park Service actually got rid of most of their stagecoach related buildings, and we did save this one, which has been used for many different purposes since the 1880s. And now that's available for folks to rent. And it's right near Grandview if you're looking for it on a map. So like I mentioned, there are 20 locations, 20 sites, I would say. And again, they're in recreation.gov. You can rent these. And a total of 29 cabins that are available for the program. Just a list of them. Won't go through each of them, but just wanted to just flash that just to give you, in case you recognize a name. And we are bringing them on. You know, we have 6 more that are currently in development. Top of Mingus Mountain, Mingus Cabin, Palace Station, which is quite remarkable. That's on the Prescott. Probably folks who know the Senator Highway have probably been by that. Buck Mountain, that's a lookout. It would be the first lookout rental in Arizona. Those are really popular in the Northwest. This would be the first one we'd have in Arizona. Down on the Coronado, Canelo, which is a workstation, very cool CCC era ranger house and bunkhouse. Water Canyon on the Apache Sick Reeves, another ranger house from the 1930s. And the Mormon Lake Guard Station, built in 1908, just off of Mormon Lake on the Coconino National Forest. So a lot going on, and just to kind of show you, it's just a cross section of Arizona where all these buildings are, all the way from Kent Springs, which is in the Madera Rec area on the Coronado, and Kentucky Camp, out in the flip side of the Chiricahuas portal area, a couple of cabins there in the Dragoons, Half Moon, up here on the Apache Sick Reeves. Apache Sick Reeves is trying to get more cabins in right now. They have one, but it's in a beautiful location up in the Three Rivers area, high elevation. Sycamore Cabin on the Prescott, Horse Thief Basin, or Horse Thief Cabin, which is near Crown King, all through Bunchen and on the Coconino. Really popular one is Crescent Moon Cabin, which is right off of Oak Creek. Beautiful, wonderful house, Lesher and Mahoney architectural design. It's featured in Arizona Highways magazine in 1944. Spring Valley Cabin near on the Kaibab. Hall Cabin on the north side of on the south side of Grand Canyon National Park. Jump Up Cabin and Big Springs Cabins, which are a bunch of cabinettes. They're on the North Kaibab, on the north side of North Rim. So just, yeah, a bit of a cross section of what we got. You know, so like I mentioned, we maintain the program with funds from our cabin rentals. It's all about our sustainable recreation vision for our agency. And this is a great example of that sustainability. 8 cabins are listed on the National Register. They represent diverse architectural forms. Like I mentioned, we're not trying to just save all of our buildings that are out of service. We're really trying to zero in on those buildings that are historically significant. And in turn, unlike, you know, I'm biased here, but you know, a lot of cabin rentals in other regions and other Forest Service cabins in the Northwest, a lot of them are kind of cookie cutter the same: log cabin, you know, vault toilet rental. And we really have a lot of diversity in what we offer regarding our buildings. A lot of them are Forest Service by you know, how they've come into our possession. We constructed them, they're out of service. A lot of them are ones that we inherited through land exchanges, or sometimes even gifted from private individuals. An array of unique environmental settings, you know, that represent the interesting cross section of Arizona's environmental zones. Down in Tucson, this is Shaw House in the Dragoons. This is Palisades, north of Tucson. And Alicia, I think you'll give me a heads up when I'm at my end here. I don't want to go too long.
Just fine.
Okay, just some facts about the cabins that we offer. They're $60 to $200 a night. $200 a night is the house that I mentioned off of Oak Creek. It sleeps 10 people. It has 3 bedrooms. and has a big Arizona room. So you can sleep a lot of people, and it's been really popular. And we haven't done a lot to change our rates as we need to with the changing inflation. So it's a good time to rent these before we do make those changes. Accessibility varies. You know, we have some limitations with some of our buildings in terms of making changes, but we do have a couple that are totally accessible. On the rest, there are varying degrees of accessibility, and we're making pushes that direction. You know, most of these buildings are located in places that can't tap into power. So we've brought in solar systems and worked with the SHPO's office and design these systems to not distract from the historic integrity of the buildings. But it's been a great added addition to these buildings to have solar power. Some are just for day use. A couple of them, Groom Creek Schoolhouse on the Prescott National Forest. It's a great building, is available for events. And then Kentucky Camp headquarters on the Coronado, that has a headquarters building that can also be used for events. The Kentucky Camp is just great. That's just such a neat location. The Arizona Trail goes right through it. It's just a wonderful site. So we capture visitor information, old school. There's a lot of old school to this to the program, and we continue to track information. We also get it, of course, through rec.gov. People can leave comments, and featured in Arizona Highways and local papers. The program was also featured in the last report to the president from the advisory council. So we had a couple pages in there about some of our endeavors. Again, so lots of projects, and Hooker Crook, we find funding sometimes internally, sometimes externally, working with partners such as the Arizona Conservation Corps, Historic Corps, various volunteer groups, Friends of Northern Arizona Forests, and really try to do a lot of operation and a lot of maintenance and deferred maintenance projects using those partners. This is Palace Station on the Prescott National Forest. Historic Corps has done a few projects out there. You may be familiar with that group. They're out of Colorado. They're a favored partner with the U.S. Forest Service, who at the Washington office level help get that program off the ground. So we work a lot with them, and they use volunteer labor for a lot of their projects. And so it's a good fit with the Forest Service and our push to have volunteerism. And yes, some of the work is work that we just can't let our own employees do. So working with partners, and believe it or not, this is a volunteer who is suited up and is doing lead paint remediation. So people love this program. They love to come out and work on these old cabins, spend a week camping and doing just really difficult work. So we have a pretty strong volunteer following for a lot of our cabin projects. Again, programs we use and partnerships: Passport in Time, historiccorps.org, Friends of Northern Arizona, Arizona Conservation Corps, and then a small group of a lot of retired Forest Service people who help work on these projects. Like I mentioned, this is Baldwin Ranch House. It's also known as Crescent Moon in our rental system. This is right there at Cathedral Rock, at the base of it, and is available for rent. There's another view of it. $200 a night. You can stay there. So, Apache May, this is another cabin. I'm just going to flip through a few pics of our cabins. It's on the Coconino National Forest, just below the rim. This is Mormon Lake Guard Station, a project that we're working on. Hopefully we'll get that available for rent in the next couple of years. There's still some foundation work to do, trying to find money to wrap that project up. Cabins on the Prescott National Forest. Groom Creek Schoolhouse that I mentioned is available for day use. Kaibab, I work on the Kaibab, so I'm biased, Spring Valley Cabin, which is near Parks, Arizona. It's the only cabin north of the Mogollon Rim that's available all year round. Really popular for locals to stay and have events. Jump Up Cabin, it's on the edge of Kaibab Creek Wilderness. Hall Cabin that I mentioned is just south of Grand Canyon. And Big Springs Cabins, a series of cabinettes from the 1950s with a big shared bunkhouse for kitchen and dining room space. So it's great. It's on the north rim of the Grand Canyon. I can't say enough nice things about Big Springs. Just a really cool location. And then Kentucky Camp on the Coronado that I mentioned. Bunkhouse, and it's a small, but it's a great adobe building, part of a mining operation from the 1880s. Years of work went into that by the Coronado National Forest to get that into a rental status. Palisades on the Coronado. Kent Springs, this is in Madera Canyon. Good luck getting it rented because it's so popular, but it's a really cool cabin, really neat building. And I think it's a early 1950s build. So just some summary points. The program has been successful. We're meeting the intent and staying viable. Fits with our sustainable recreation initiatives we've had. We pool our revenue, and it's really without that pooled revenue, I think that the program would really fall flat. And Cabin Rental Board oversees the program, and there's great views. A lot of these just butt right into the national forests. This one is right next to the wilderness. So this is Kaibab Creek Wilderness. The wilderness boundary is probably 40 feet away. So yeah, just a great thing, and the public really appreciates it. Just a few comments from our visitors. Beautiful place. And it's really bringing people under the national forest and into locations they wouldn't otherwise. So it's really, I look at it as a gateway to trying to get more people onto the forest, see our national forests, and see our history, and appreciate the historic buildings that we have. So yeah, one of my favorite comments. I'm coming back here for the zombie apocalypse, and that's what we hope to offer. So thank you very much. I appreciate all the attention, and hopefully I stayed close to my time frame.
Yes, thank you, Jeremy. There were some resources that I put in the chat, along with some others from your organization, or from the Forest Service putting in resources. I included the Rooms with a View website and the brochure. And another person added that there is a project coming up soon. If you would like to volunteer, sign up to volunteer. And I also wanted to add or bring up again that if you have any questions, make sure to add them in the chat. Our next speaker will be Corky Poster. Corky is a registered architect in the state of Arizona since 1976 and a certified planner since 1990. He has practiced architecture, planning, and preservation in Tucson since 1973. He is one of 3 principals at Poster, Myrtle, McDonald, and after 28 years at the University of Arizona, Mr. Poster is now Distinguished Professor Emeritus at the College of Architecture, Planning, and Landscape Architecture, also known as CAPLA, and the former director of the Druckmann Institute. He was acting dean of CAPLA in 2002 and 2003. Mr. Poster's professional work focuses on historic preservation, community planning, urban design, housing, and community buildings. So with that, I give you Corky Poster.
Thank you, Alicia. I'm going to share my screen. And can you all see that? Hello, can you,
I cannot
can-
see that yet.
okay, let me go backwards then.
There we go.
How's that?
Perfect.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, Alicia. Thanks for being so well organized and putting together a really nice group of presentations today. I'm excited to be here. I'm going to go very quickly through a lot of images, so fasten your seatbelts. I'm going to focus on sustainable preservation embedded in community. And the focus of that is the contribution that preservation has toward community and community development. Our work is quite broad in terms of preservation, and I'm going to go through a sequence of different kinds of work that we do. First, let me just explain that everything we do here is a team project, and none of it could be done without the great people at Poster, Merck, and McDonald. We're a partnership of 3 people, myself, John Murto, and Savannah McDonald. We sort of have a natural succession plan here. I'm in my 70s, John's in her 50s, and in his 50s, and Savannah's in her 30s. So we hope to be around for a while. I'm going to cover a series of project by topic, and that is to talk about issues that are cultural, going through 3 projects that we've done. I'm going to talk about housing, particularly affordable housing, talk about rural landscapes and work that we've done in there, urban projects and campus projects. But all of them have a common theme of contributing to community and helping to put preservation at the center of community development. So let me go through this. It's a lot of projects, and I'm going to show you more images that I'm going to do talking, but I'll just keep a running commentary. One of the projects we've been involved with for almost 30 years is the Dunbar School. Those of you who don't know the history of the Dunbar School, it was segregated African-American school from 1912 to 1951, and it became vacant when a court order closed the school in 1978. TUSD tried to put it up for auction, but the Black community in Tucson said, we don't think so, and wound up a group of us managed to purchase the building for $25 to create an African-American cultural center and community cultural center. All of the elements of the building were built by Henry Jostad, so it's a really interesting sequence of construction by the same architect from 1918 all the way to 1951. This is the north elevation. We've done a lot of interior preservation, renewing the interior of the building and getting it back to the way it was when it was first built. Second projects that we're very proud of is the Matus Mesa Yaqui Museum. This is an image of the Matus Mesa house in serious disrepair. It was acquired by the Pascua Yaqui tribe and the San Ignacio Yaqui Council, and with funding from the City of Tucson Housing Community Development, with a lot of work with Jonathan Mabry, we were able to put together this museum. So we have restored that old building, creating a larger campus with some other uses on site, including a barbecue and some variety of issues. A really interesting building. One of the walls was made out of Coca-Cola pallets and crates, but it's now in good shape. This is a during construction project, very modest, but it now serves as an important museum within the Pascua Yaqui community in Old Pascua, in basically in downtown Tucson. Third project, again, we're really proud of, we did a while ago, was the La Pelita and El Tiradito Shrine. This is La Pelita. We restored the signage. We restored the mural. We did a lot of work inside to stabilize the building. This is the mural before the restoration of the mural. As you can see, lots of cracks. And we had the same artist do an updated version of that project. Just to the north of that is the El Tiradito Shrine. We did stabilization of the exposed adobe structure. We replastered the hearth that had all the plaster had fallen off, and we restored the brick coping that protected the adobe. It's very well used and a very important community element in Tucson. Everyone goes there, and it's a functioning community shrine. PMM does a lot of housing. It's one of the key components of our portfolio, and we've done a pretty interesting set of projects. This is the Marist College, alleged to be the tallest adobe structure in Arizona. It's 3 stories. And due to a flood on the roof by clogged canales, the corners blew out. And so this was being held up by baling wire for the longest time. And over about a 15-year period, no one could figure out how to financially and sustainably restore the building. But we combined it with a low-income housing tax credit program. And this is the way it is today. It houses 8 low-income tenants with a community space at the lower level, fully restored. We actually built a steel endoskeleton inside the structure to stabilize it and to make sure it stood up in an earthquake. And you can see it in the background, the back right of this. We combined it with another 75 units of this affordable housing. And together, bearing the costs of the Marist College and the overall project, we were able to make it financially sustainable. Another project that we're very proud of is the Bowman Hotel in Nogales, on the main street in Nogales. This is an older postcard. Sorry, it's fuzzy, but it wasn't a great quality postcard to start with. It was a hotel built in 1910, I believe, and then it fell into serious disrepair. Everything above the first floor was abandoned, and there were some commercial uses. We did something pretty controversial, not recommended for every project, but it made sense on this one. The entire interior of the project was unsavable. We had structural failure throughout the building. And so we shored up the north and south brick elevations. Not an easy thing to do when you have 0 lot line and state highway on both sides of you. So we had to close a lane of state highway in both directions and essentially inserted a new construction. This is 48 units of affordable housing, some of which use the east and west facades as their windows. But it's right downtown Nogales, and pretty extraordinary and difficult project, the hardest project we've ever done from a technical point of view. But it's lovely, and we feel proud that we're able to save those elevations. Again, not the first approach we would take toward preservation, but we would have nothing if we didn't do this. An interior courtyard, and then a real contrast between old and new and the way those were blended together. Another project that we're nearly completion on is the Benedictine Monastery. This is 1939 Roy Place building. As you can see, when it was first built, it was in the middle of nowhere. The Miramonte neighborhood and Sam Hughes neighborhoods were built around it. It was purchased by a private owner, including the 7 acres of the property. It's a Roy Place building, as I said. One of my favorite photos of Roy Place walking down the gangplank during the middle of construction. It's really lovely inside. This is the chapel. It's the view of the tower looking north from the south. We created a historic landmark for the project and developed a series of development guidelines that were written into the historic landmark, which we have followed both for the site and for the building itself. This is the building right now, nearly completion. There are 255 new apartments built around the monastery. Again, same kind of thing as the Marist College. It took the additional development of the site to be able to afford the the rehabilitation of the monastery. Monastery will continue to be residential uses as well, except a kind of a commercial restaurant use in the desanctified chapel, and then some commercial uses along Country Club. Controversial project because we built it in the middle of two neighborhoods with a lot of clout, and but we did a PAD and a historic landmark, and we are very, very proud of the result. We've worked on rural landscape projects for many years. One of our first and favorites is the Canoa Ranch, which is a 5,000 acre county acquired project. The ranch dates back into about 1800 when it was in Spanish hands, then Mexican hands, and then eventually the Manning family acquired the property in the 30s. This is a view of the ranch now and some old historic views of that. We did a full-blown master plan of the 5,000 acre site and of the headquarters, developing not just the buildings, but also the rural landscape interpretive. We did a lot of Adobe work, making our own Adobes on site and using them to restore the properties. On the left in both these photographs, you can see the condition of the building before and after. These are two separate structures in the headquarters. Took a lot of work and took a lot of effort by a lot of people. Another project we're doing in Oro Valley is the Steam Pump Ranch. Steam Pump Ranch was a ranch built just around slightly pre-railroad in the 1870s in Oro Valley, and it served as a watering way station for the cattle coming out of Pinal County and the backside of the Catalina Mountains on their way to market at the train station in downtown Tucson. So this is the Push family in their original ranch house, and this is the original pump. They brought a steam pump from Germany and used it to pump water out of the ground. It's right next to the La Cañada Wash, and so there's lots of groundwater, and they fattened up the cattle before they went to get weighed and go to market. Again, we did a full master plan of this 5 acre site, and over the last several years, we've been developing building by building. We're now working on 2 others, the garage and the barbecue building. This is the restoration, rehabilitation into a museum of the Push Ranch house. This is an interesting approach that we've taken on this and the next project as well. We call it ghosted structures. We had a ruin of the original pump house, and we decided to kind of combine the Casa Grande approach of building a protective structure with the Ben Franklin structure in Philadelphia by building a new protective structure over the ruin, but in the shape and form of the original structure, so that you get a twofer. You get protection of the Adobe ruins, and you get a sense of what the original building looked like. It's really lovely in there. It's well lit, and it's a great way to protect a historic structure. We did the same thing at Fort Lowell. This is Fort Lowell Park, a 70 acre parcel in 70 acre park in kind of northeast Tucson, but it's on the site of Fort Lowell, shown here, superimposed over the current aerial of the park. Again, we did a master plan of that and are in the process of essentially recreating the image of the parade grounds where the fort building surrounded, again, using both rehabilitation and ghosted structures to make that point. This is a view of officers' quarters number 3 in the foreground that we have rehabilitated. And then in the back are officers' quarters number 1 and 2, which were in ruins, and we recreated the shape of that in a protective structure. It shows what that looks like in one of those cases. And now we are currently undertaking the repair, preservation of the commissary, one of the buildings on the north side of Fort Lowell. And we're going to be doing lots of Adobe repairs and roofing repairs for the City of Tucson Parks and Recreation. We've done a lot of urban projects. This is a historic train depot, which has become a community center for the north side of downtown. It still functions as an Amtrak, but bringing the building back to its former glory of 1941. It has restaurants, office space, beauty salons, transportation museum, and now really functions as an important piece of community. We were able to improve the railroad side of the building as well, creating beautiful outdoor patio spaces where there just was asphalt paving and places to be. And this is a full rehabilitation of the building with down to scraping the windows to find out what colors they were. Another Roy Place building that we've had the pleasure of working on is the Montgomery Ward building. We call it the Roy Place building as the Pima County, the owner. Roy Place had his office in that tower. This is 1921, built at the same time as the Pima County Courthouse. And then that building was dramatically changed. Terry Atkinson did a major change in the building. I'll leave it at that. Destroying a lot of the ornamentation, but leaving some. And it stayed, basically was a Walgreens for a long time. And we were able to do a full restoration of that building. It's now a downtown campus for the University of Arizona. We had enough drawing. We had the original drawings of the project and enough of the remnant ornamentation so that working with Concrete Designs, we were able to recreate all of the ornamentation that existed. The building now is in community use, University of Arizona campus use right in the middle of downtown. Same year, same architect. We just finished the rehabilitation of the old Pima County Courthouse. We're honored to have been working on this project. First thing out of the gate is we had to use some serious waterproofing and reparation of the dome, the signature dome of the courthouse. Now waterproof. It was leaking a great deal before that. And now again, restoring some of the rooms under the dome for public use. We have restored let me get my terminologies right. We did a preservation of the exterior. We're able to find the original color and repaired all the cracks and breaks and things that needed to be replaced. We did a full restoration of the John Dillinger courtroom on the second floor of the courthouse. And then the north wing has been adaptively reused, rehabilitated to be now the Southern Arizona Heritage and Visitor Center run by Pima County. Be sure to stop in. It's free and it gives you a great orientation to all the sites in Pima County. And then the whole south wing is the Alfie Norville Gem and Mineral Museum run by the University of Arizona. And that is, I dare say, the best museum of its kind in the country. We had the honor of working with Ralph Applebaum and Associates, amazing, nationally recognized, internationally recognized exhibit designers, and be sure to see that. It's pretty extraordinary. We've also had the honor of working on most of the south side of the modern mall at the University of Arizona. First out of the gate, we did a full-blown adaptive reuse and rehabilitation of the interior and a restoration of the exterior of Old Main. This is a picture when it was first built. This is during construction. You can see that the staircase hasn't yet been built to the building. We did a full-blown improvement to this building, including rebuilding piece by piece the historic steel roof on that, 3 different kinds of roofing materials. And we did essentially handmade versions of those original 1887 to 1891 a roof. There was a failure of the veranda around the building, so we reconstructed that. One of the things that we're real proud of that we got great kudos from SHPO on was we had the dilemma of the proportions of the exterior veranda having a non-code compliant railing height of 29 inches. Everyone told us, well, we should just raise that. We chose a different approach, and we built what we feel like is a virtually invisible code compliant railing, light steel railing inside of that, so that the original proportions of those openings are maintained. The building is LEED Silver, just to talk a little bit about sustainability standards. What's interesting, and it's at the time a shortcoming, I think, of the US Green Building Association program, is that we wound up registering this building as a new building because it was you didn't get enough credits in the process for it being a historic building, but nonetheless, without modifying the building skin, so those are the original windows, we were able to achieve LEED Silver by some really creative mechanical, electrical, and plumbing improvements. This is the interior cruciform, which we took back to precisely the way it was when the building was built, including the redwood and fir stripe wainscot that surrounded the interior, the original fir flooring. The only thing that's different with this is the ceiling, lighting, and ceiling acoustics make this a really very pleasant place to be in. We took an adaptive reuse effort, a rehabilitation effort, which we called building a ship in a bottle. So we have a modern interior, but we kept that interior away from the edges of the building, so we did not touch the bottle with the ship. Another project, again, that we are nearing completion on is the Student Success District, which is a 4-building, student-centered campus in the middle of the University of Arizona campus. We did rehabilitation of the main library on the left of the screen, the Science and Engineering Library on the right of the screen. That's also a place-in-place building. The rehabilitation of Bear Down Gym, again, a right place building, and then the construction of a new building at the south end of Bear Down Gym. This is a photograph of the original dedication of the gym in 1927. Building is Bear Down Gym is built in 1926, again, right place. And we did a pretty interesting thing with this building. At the north end of the building, we have essentially restored the gymnasium to the way it was when it was built. And then all of a sudden, as you go further south, the building transforms, and we constructed a 3-story steel building inside the historic shell of the Bear Down Gym, including a giant window that then opens out to the south. We're in the process of installing these historic photos at the north end of the gym. This gives you an idea of what that 3-story steel building looks like, with all these various student services and the big opening that we put in the south end of the building that connects to the other building in the south. We work closely with SHPO on all of these elements and got their approval on every step of the way. This is the beautiful north entry to the Bear Down Gym. Finally, a project that we are in the middle of construction on, also a right place building, 1939, 48, and 62. And it's being renovated as a collaborative classroom building. Again, some controversy here. The building shown on the left had 1936, and then an L-shaped 48 edition, and then a 1962 plug. We demolished the 62 plug and half of the 1948 edition because the building could not be rehabilitated to meet the large scale new classrooms that we needed. Again, worked closely with SHPO and got approval for this. Part of our work was to really respect the elements of the historic building while building an unapologetic new modern building next to that. So this shows the west elevation of the historic building and the new building with a careful set of vertical lines and horizontal lines, and we think is a respectful version of the new construction. Anyway, I went a little bit over my time, but I'm happy to answer any questions when we get to that portion. I will stop sharing.
Thank you so much, Corky. That was so great. I learned so much about projects in Southern Arizona. Our next and final speaker is Craig DeMarco. Craig DeMarco is the founder of DeMarco Unlimited, the Phoenix-based company behind innovative concepts such as Air Guitar Convenience Store in Gilbert, Arizona, as well as the founding partner at Upward Projects, a portfolio of hospitality-focused restaurant brands, including Postino Wine Cafe, Joyride Taco House, Federal Pizza, Windsor, and Churn, with 20 locations in Arizona, Colorado, and Texas. Craig is an active member of the Arizona YPO chapter, founding member of Devour Phoenix, was inducted into the Arizona Culinary Hall of Fame as Restaurateur of the Year, and was honored by the Arizona Restaurant Association as a food pioneer. Upward Projects has been consistently named in the Inc. 5000 list of the nation's fastest growing companies. Here's our third speaker, Craig DeMarco.
Hey guys, and sorry my backdrop's not all that exciting, but I'm in the storage room of one of our restaurants, and things are awesome. 2 days ago, we celebrated our 21-year anniversary at 40th Street in Campbell with Postino Arcadia, which was a 1959 post office building and substation. For those of you that know that corner, it was pretty run down when we got it. And we have a couple of concepts there. We have a grocery store called the Grand Orange Grocery, and it's been a huge success. But when we started 23 years ago working on that intersection, we had a huge pushback from the neighborhood. In fact, at the time, we had the largest opposition to a restaurant use permit in the history of the city of Phoenix. It went all the way to city council. We squeaked by and won by 1 vote. And I can't imagine what the valley would look like if we had lost that vote at the time. But back then, we just found an old brick building we thought was cool in our neighborhood. Adaptive reuse wasn't a term being used. We went for it. We were kind of rookies at the time. And it's really led to our whole company's culture, and our mission is to take architecturally and historically relevant buildings and use them again, repurpose them in great neighborhoods. And we've done 24 adaptive reuse projects over the past 21 years. The majority in Phoenix, but we're doing in Denver and Colorado, Georgia. We're about to go into California. So we started at 40th Street in Campbell and turned that neighborhood around. And if you have been around there and seen what's happened to the neighborhoods in that area, it's hard to imagine that neighborhood being not a spectacular place to live. But back then it was pretty sketchy and rough. Home values have increased like crazy. Young families have moved in. It's very pedestrian, dogs, kids, bikes, strollers, and very proud that we were part of the changing of that neighborhood. We then focused our efforts on Central and Camelback, just north of Camelback between Oregon and Coulter. We assembled a bunch of property. One of our oldest buildings is there. It's a 1940 strip mall where we have a couple of restaurants, 1 restaurant and 1 ice cream shop. And we assembled all 3 of the 4 corners, worked with the city on all the entitlements, worked with all the historic neighborhood associations, Medlock, Windsor, Pearson Place, and St. Francis. It's the only intersection in the city of Phoenix where 4 come together at one point. Did tons of neighborhood outreach and had to figure out how to increase the volume and the traffic down there and improve these old buildings. The first one we did was Postino Central. It was in a building that housed Katz's Deli, which was an iconic Jewish deli for over 25 years. Before that, it was an insurance office. We repurposed it, and it's been cranking along ever since. We then went across the street and found a 1940s strip mall, and at the time, there were many people in town bidding on it. I think we're the only group that wanted to renovate and save the building. Everyone else was going to scrape it. It's still there today. One of the famous stories is Rose Mofford used to get her hair done there for years and years and years at Dee's International Airport. So we're very proud of our preservation efforts. We clustered stores. All of our brands are represented on that intersection. And it's just been, we've seen a huge increase in pedestrian traffic in neighborhoods. We worked with the city of Phoenix to take Central Avenue between Camelback and Missouri from 6 lanes, 3 going in each direction, down to 2 lanes in each direction. We added bike lanes. We put a pedestrian style hawk in, all on the city's dime, and we increased a livable, walkable neighborhood. And again, back to our mission of our company, that's kind of what we love doing. We love being surrounded on all 4 sides by residential. While we're doing these adaptive reuse projects, we always have these discovery moments like at Federal Pizza, which was first federal savings and loan, while we were trenching the underground to do the plumbing and get it set up to be the restaurant. We ran into a 13-foot by 13-foot, 3-inch thick, or I'm sorry, 3/4 inch thick steel plate that sat underneath the vault. Our saw cutters hit that, dead stopped, had to bring a plasma cutter in, and I've got 100 of those stories in every project we've ever done of all these beautiful discovery moments, which I think adds to the soul and the uniqueness of all of our projects. We decided to test out our concept in the suburban area. We went out to Gilbert, Arizona, which is where I'm at right now. We went into the Heritage District back before the Heritage District was what it was today. We repurposed a restaurant that had 5 failed restaurants in it over a 10-year period. It was in every 2 years, someone slapped a new coat of paint, a new sign, and a new menu and tried to make a go of it. The city of Gilbert, let me be more specific, the town of Gilbert proposed to us that they're going to renovate and create a whole entertainment district. We believed them. We went in there, we renovated the building, added a bunch of great design to it, and now it's one of the busiest stores in our whole system. A couple of the other noteworthy projects we've done, we took 40th Street in Campbell, which we have a restaurant there called Chelsea's Kitchen. It used to be a 1920s Western film studio called Kudia Estates. We wanted to honor that history, so we built a steel building and wrapped it in adobe mud that we made in Tucson. It's kind of an old roadhouse style place. It's a neighborhood favorite. In Denver, we took a 1956 bookbinding company and turned it into a Postino and an old neighborhood, and that neighborhood's improved and increased in value since we've been there. So it's been our whole mission to do that. And our newest concept, Air Guitar, we bought a piece of farmland out in Gilbert, adjacent to Agritopia, where the Johnson family is doing the new project called Epicenter. We developed a brand new concept and a brand new building to be adjacent from them. And with the growth that's going out on here, we're really having a ton of success and really love it. And I'm trying to think of some other noteworthy projects we've had. We've renovated all kinds of old buildings in Houston and Dallas, and this is kind of our passion. So I'll stop there and open it up for any questions.
Great, thank you, Craig. Yeah, this will start our Q&A session if our other presenters would like to also turn their screens back on. Also reminder to the chat, if you have a question, please put it in the chat. Our first question that we got in the chat was from Lee Johnson to Jeremy, asking, are all the cabins run with internal Forest Service staff, or are there concessionaires that run some sites?
All right, sorry about that. There was a bit of a delay on hitting the mute button. Yeah, for our program, all cabins are run by the Forest Service. That's the condition of the FLORIA Act that I mentioned. So they're all Forest Service run and maintained. And the other half of that question, yeah, they are all cabins dry. Yeah, they're all. Are you meaning that they don't have? It would need some clarification, I think, on that. There's various sources of heat. They're also different. There's some have HVAC, or a couple have HVAC, wood stoves, other kind of heating apparatuses. Some have just space heaters, but most of them are. Not all of them are off the grid, but about half of them are off the grid. They're and I can give you more specs. I'll put my email in the chat if you want to just give me shoot me an email or give me a call. I can give you more information. our users generally respectful of the structures. I will say, as probably everybody on the call can attest, who's manages buildings, is the better condition that they're in, the better that they're treated. So where we've had rentals that haven't had the kind of maintenance that they've really needed, and we've had staffing issues. Once maintenance decreases, then we just have increased damage and disrespect to the buildings. But in general, surprisingly, honestly, people really do treat these with respect. There's quite a following of folks who stay in them. Always new people, of course, but there's a core group of people. And so periodically we'll get messages from folks who have stayed with them saying, hey, we saw an issue and a leaky faucet or another issue, and we fixed it. We'd like them not to do that, but a lot of folks, stay into them enough. I think they start to feel a little bit of ownership. And so, yeah, a lot better treatment than you might expect from the general public. So, and again, I'll put my email in the chat or my phone number.
Great. Another question I have for you, Jeremy, was, I believe this was mentioned in the chat earlier, but is there any other upcoming projects in Arizona that you can look out for?
Yeah, absolutely. We have one coming up at Buck Mountain Lookout. In fact, we're needing volunteers. That project's going to kick off in May. If you go to historiccore.org, and I'll put that in the chat too, you can sign up for that project. Kind of a cool one. Again, it's a lookout cabin, and we need bodies. We need folks who are interested in working on it and don't mind camping for a week. Usually, HistoricCorps does a good job. They feed their folks, so you just need to show up with a tent and be ready to camp and work, and they take care of your 3 square meals, and it doesn't cost anything, so except your time and effort. So, yeah, I'll put that in the chat.
Okay. This is a question for Corky. Why do you feel that it's important to save these or to reuse these buildings?
Well, that's an interesting question. We need to preserve our heritage always, and it's funny that I think the lay public has this museum notion that we're going to take buildings and we're going to restore or rehabilitate the inside of the building, and it's going to be a pristine piece of historic preservation. And the real world, that's not the case at all. In the real world, the only way to save historic buildings is to give them a contemporary, sustainable, and often economically sustainable use. So we don't want to treat old buildings like they're the little fragile grandfather in the corner. What we want to do is bring them to the dining table and let them be an active participant in the community. And that was why my focus in the presentation was about community, that these venerable buildings, admired by many, people would like to save them. The only way they're going to get saved is if someone can come up with a sustainable contemporary use. And that's really critical. And it's something that most of the lay public doesn't yet get. A good example is the Marist College. Everybody wanted to save the Marist College, but no one could figure out how to do that in an economically sustainable way. And so I think the creativity that we brought to that project was to say, look, it's a beautiful old building. We want to save it. But again, we can't turn it into a museum with public funding or privately raised funding and put little velvet ropes in front of every room. What we need to do is say, how can we take that old building, that beautiful old building, and how can we make it a useful contributor to contemporary society? And the way we did that in that particular project was by making it an affordable housing project. And so it's a place where people live and pay rent and become part of the community. And I think that's absolutely critical to everyone who's involved in historic preservation. We need to figure out how to use them in today's economy in today's community and in today's society, and make it a contributing member of that society in a way that it was when it was first built. So we have a lot of important buildings. It takes a great effort to save them, but the key to it is what is the new use going to be, and how can we combine that new use with the funding to be able to do what we need to do to really bring that building back to life.
Thank you. That was a great answer. There was another question that came in for Jeremy. When using historic court, does the Forest Service have to pay a fee for them to come help us rehab?
The Forest Service does pay our partners. That is just the cost of doing business. But with partnerships such as HistoriCorps or any other Forest Service partner where we have an agreement to have them work, there needs to be a shared contribution. So it's not the same as just contracting. The partner needs to come to the table with their own level of contribution, whether it's labor, materials and supplies, equipment, that sort of thing. So it is a shared opportunity or a shared undertaking when we work with partners in that respect. So Forest Service comes up with the money, we find a partner, and we put that partnership into a formal agreement through grants and agreements office in Albuquerque, and then we implement it. So a lot of work goes into it. We also do some contracting as well, and sometimes that's a better tool for various projects that we're doing, especially if we have something that's a big heavy lift that's beyond the abilities of our partners. But finding money internally is a bit of a struggle. There's no earmark in the Forest Service for historic preservation. In fact, just as an aside, there's only one employee in the entire region, Arizona, New Mexico, who actually has preservation in their job title. A lot of archaeologists, but they're principally doing archaeology and compliance work for other projects. So we're definitely swimming against the current on a lot of the preservation work we do with the bigger initiatives of our agency.
They added another question that if they have a condition assessment needs materials list with materials already bought, will HistoriCorps come to just help complete the rehab work, or will they need to be involved in the process from the beginning and conduct their own assessment?
Yeah, you need to have them come out to do just like any, whether it's a contractor or partner, they need to come out and see the project, do their own cost assessment. It's great if you have the materials and supplies available and you can embed that into your agreement and use that as a cost saving measure to what the project would actually cost. But yeah, you don't just call them up and have them show up on the job site to work on things. They have their own process by which they evaluate scope of work and submit that as a proposal to the forest.
Great, thank you. I have one last question, unless any more come in, for both of you, and that is, how did you get started in doing these adaptive reuse projects?
I'll go first if that's okay. It's kind of an interesting question. Our first preservation project was a project we were simply asked to do, and it is the project that is now called the Jewish History Museum in Tucson. It was the original Temple Emmanuel Synagogue built in 1910 on South Stone Avenue, and it had been given up by the Jewish community. It was a Baptist church. And then there was a small group of folks in the Jewish community that acquired the property. They had a bad result and wound up losing the property, got it back again, and was looking for some help in getting the thing off the ground. And so we did a SHPO, actually, a heritage grant with SHPO, $125,000, and did a kind of rehabilitation of the main bones of that project, and it won a national Trust Honor Award that year. And all of a sudden we were in the preservation business. And what happens, of course, if you're successful in a project, you get the next phone call and the next phone call. The next big project we did was the historic train depot. And again, when you do projects well and when they're successful, you get other projects. And we wound up essentially backfilling our knowledge, becoming experts in historic preservation after the fact, studying and becoming much more proficient in our understanding of the Secretary of Interior standards. But it was not quite accidental, but it has become a very important part of our practice. But it was not an intentional strategic effort on our part, but we sort of backed into it with successful projects.
That's amazing. Jeremy, would you like that?
Yeah, sure. You know, I have a degree in anthropology and a master's in anthropology as well. So I got into the agency doing archaeology principally. But it's interesting. A lot of federal cultural resource specialists, when they get hired, that's typically what their forte is. Yet they get to a land managing unit and they realize that, hey, a great number of the properties that they have responsibility for managing happen to be historic buildings. And you know, it's kind of training and experience that they didn't necessarily receive through their college education. So it's a lot of on the fly, on the job, and reaching out to various experts outside of the agency to figure out the best way to manage. And so I was in a similar situation where we had various historic buildings on the land managing unit I was working on, and when we were looking at adaptive reuse, looking for adaptive reuse solutions. And I'll just say, when we think preservation in the federal government, a lot of times it's ruins, especially in the Southwest. It's Pueblo ruins and other types of buildings that are just associated with the Southwest region. But there's this other suite of historic buildings that just kind of have been overlooked. Agencies really looking to unload these buildings, and so I got aligned with the cabin rental program in the late 2007, 2008, and just got engaged with this core group of really good people who weren't necessarily in cultural resource management, but were in recreation and engineering and various other program areas, and started working on various projects. One in particular, the one that really got me started, was a Apache made cabin just off the Mogollon Rim, and some work had been done, but preservation work was still needed, as well as a strategy to adaptively reuse the building. And just fell in love with all these people who really cared about the place, people who had worked there or had a vision. So it was, all these people came together with strategies towards doing adaptive reuse, and that's the first cabin that I worked on that got flipped into the cabin rental program through a lot of incredible work from people who are just dedicating their time and energy and finding creative solutions. So since that time, really 2007, 2008, I've just tried to incorporate more and more of it into the work I do, and both in my professional work and when I have time outside of work to contribute to projects, I also do that. So, I wish I'd started on this earlier. That's all I can say. But that's kind of some of my background and earlier experiences.
Thank you. You both gave great answers.
Alicia, I just had one. If we have some time, I just wanted to share one other thing that I think would be useful for the folks on the webinar, and that is that when you look at the Secretary of Interior standards, it's very cut and dry. You've got various treatments of preservation and rehabilitation and restoration and reconstruction, and it all looks very clear. And then when you get involved in a project, you realize that all of those clear black and white categories disappear and everything is gray. And so one of the things that we've learned in all the projects that we've shown really is that when you get involved in projects, it's the commitment to preservation combined with a very creative approach to how to do it that really gets you through the day. And every project we do, all of a sudden, none of those categories seem to make a lot of clear sense. And every decision we have to make seems to be, could go this way, could go that way. And so it's just from our experience that preservation ultimately is a very hands-on creative process. And while it's important to truly understand the standards as a guideline, when you get into every project, all of that clarity disappears, and you just need a continued commitment to the spirit of preservation, and that will carry you through the project as you have to make a series of much more complex decisions throughout the process.
Thank you. That was great advice. We did have one more question come in for you, Corky. Any advice for rural landscape / ranch complex property plan creation?
That's a great question. You know, the basis of any good plan is understanding the existing conditions and understanding the history. So we showed that master plan, for example, for Canoa Ranch, but we had a 200-page analysis of the Canoa Ranch and all the history and the landscape and the ecology and all of the elements of rural landscapes, in addition to the conditions of the building. And so I think the key really to all preservation is, you know, you have to start at the bottom. You have to start understanding the existing conditions. We do a lot of what we call capital needs assessments. And so really getting involved in the rural landscape and understanding how it evolved over time and who lived there and how they lived there and what remnants they've left behind. When we were doing the Canoa Ranch, we started to do a timeline. A timeline always implies one segment of time followed by another segment of time, followed by another segment of time. And then when we were trying to do that, we realized that's not the way it works at all. And when you have the first segment of time, that's always there. And the next segment of time sits on top of that, not next to the end of that. And so it winds up being a layer cake of time rather than a single line of time. So that the Native American history on the Canoa Ranch is still there. It didn't end. And the Spanish history is still there. It didn't end. And each new layer of history was built on top of the previous history. So understanding the land is first and foremost, and understanding those complex layers of history and how they interact is very critical. And then on that same question, I want to go back to the contemporary uses, and I'm going to use a project that's been really frustrating for us because it's an amazing resource. And that's Camp Naco in Naco, Arizona. Some of you may be very familiar with that, but it was an army fort built right around the time of the Mexican Revolution, when the US got nervous about that revolution being exported to the north. And there were 84 forts built along the US-Mexico border. 83 of those are gone. The only one that's still standing and the only one that was built out of adobe is Camp Naco, Fort Naco. And it's there and it's beautiful. And a group of us have spent the last, 20 years trying to figure out how to reuse in a sustainable way a 50,000 square foot adobe fort next to a little town on the Mexican border. So the key for a lot of rural landscapes, getting back to the question, is that sometimes it's very difficult to come up with a use that will support the rehabilitation of the structures. In the case of Camp Naco, its remote location and the costs of its rehabilitation such that no one so far has been able to figure out what use can go in there that would allow for a sustainable rehabilitation of that site. And that's a pretty critical issue. When we're working on on Canoa Ranch and Steam Pump Ranch, we used a group out of Cambridge, Massachusetts called Consulticon, and they are heritage economists. And that was extraordinarily helpful because they're the ones that help you figure out how to make a rural landscape be economically viable and therefore able to be rehabilitated. So those are just some of our insights into the question about rural landscapes.
Thank you, Corky. This will be the end of our Q&A session, but before you all leave, we thank you all for coming. Thank you especially to our speakers, Corky, Jeremy, and Craig. I learned so much, and I'm sure everyone else did as well. Be sure to check out, I will put a list of resources in the chat for more information. Again, this webinar was recorded, and I did put in the chat where you can find that when it is available on our YouTube channel and on our webinars page. Thank you again for speakers, for all of you attending. It means so much. And be sure to check out part 2 of this webinar 2 weeks from today, same time, on deconstruction and salvaging. Other ways to we can preserve when a building is to be demolished. I'll put the resources in the chat. There's related articles, different cities preservation plans. If you are looking to learn more about adaptive reuse in Arizona. And I thank you all for coming.
Thank you.
Yep. Thank you, everybody. Thanks,
Thank
Alicia.
you.